Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about business email compromise scams. Let's go down to the beach and talk about that. On one of my prior videos, a gentleman by the name of Musical Neptunian put this comment on there. Business email compromise scams, BEC, are among the worst. The scammer hacks into the company email server. Thus, they can send emails that impersonate business transactions with 100% accuracy. This is massive in the real estate industry. Banks so far offer no compensation for being a scam victim of a BEC, even though the amounts scammed are often massive, often $50,000 at a time. Scammers are starting to use AI, artificial intelligence, to impersonate family members' voices in scams. A huge current scam is to phone someone and fake being their son, cousin, brother, something, and say, "I am in trouble, I need money." In short, this is called the Hello Mum scam. Again, it's unlikely that any money scammed will ever be returned. And of course, that's because the scammers are almost always off-site, outside the United States. So I got to looking into business email compromise scams, and I have been hit with these frequently. I often get emails that say, with my firm name, that say, that either has something misspelled, or they have two letters transposed, or the name of the sender is one letter off from what it should be. And of course, the reply to address and everything is different. A lot of times, if your email program allows you to do this, you can go look at the message headers, and what you'll find is that it comes from a .ru or .cr or, somewhere in Africa, .ni. Any of these different countries will have, it will come to you basically from a foreign country, even though it will not appear to be from a foreign country. And basically what these scams do is they will say things like, "Attached, please find an invoice that needs to be approved and paid." And so what they are looking for you to do is say, "Oh, I didn't know I had this invoice, but okay," and send it on to your accounting person to have it paid. But in most cases, what will start as a small amount, $50 for supplies, let's say, pretty soon you're starting to get these on a regular basis, and the amounts have gone up and up and up and up, and they will continue to steal until, they get caught. So you should always look at any invoice very carefully. You should always look at the message headers, and you should be very, very careful about anything that appears even the least bit suspicious. Now, someone offered the opinion that a lot of times these emails have misspellings in them. The misspellings are intentional, and they're designed to help the bad guy get away. In other words, if I send somebody an email and they're smart enough to realize this is a scam email, they're not going to bite, but they're probably also not going to forward it on to the FBI. Well, that would be wrong, because whenever I get these, I get a lot of spoofed email messages on my American Express card, and I send them to the email address for American Express for spoofed issues. And I usually get back an auto reply from them, but I'm pretty sure that when those people use those spoofed email addresses, somebody does follow up and at least tries to shut down that particular email domain. So you have to be really careful about using any kind of email to do commerce. Now, I want to take a moment here and deviate for just a second and talk about a really fascinating book called The Art of Deception by Kevin Mitnick. Now, Kevin Mitnick is not a saint. I believe he was arrested, and I think he went to prison. I believe that's in his foreword. to this book about because he was a hacker. He hacked into a number of different locations, and eventually he was caught by the FBI and convicted. But what is fascinating about this book is its unique descriptions of how social engineering works and how it can be used to get information. And one of the points that Mr. Mitnick makes here is that a lot of times information that is thought to be innocuous turns out to be nothing like innocuous and is in fact very valuable. In his book, he talks about how a lot of people think the way you keep information safe is to lock it in a safe. But then he says, in reality, penetrating a company's security often starts with a bad guy obtaining some piece of information or some document that seems so innocent, so everyday, unimportant, that most people in the organization wouldn't see any reason why the item should be protected and restricted. And indeed, that's the case. Mitnick then goes through and explains how social engineering works. He talks about a guy who needed to find out where a husband had stacked his money in order to prepare for a divorce. In other words, where did he go to hide his assets? And the social engineering occurred when the private investigator went to go find out where this money was. You can't just go into a bank and ask a bank, hey, does Mr. Jones have an account here? Because in most cases, they aren't going to answer you. So what the private detective did was he called a bank and asked some basic questions about one of the companies that is used to clear bank accounts based on Social Security number. In other words, there are numerous companies that if you call them, if you're a bank, they can locate other accounts that you may have opened and whether or not you have ever had any insufficient funds and that sort of thing. And banks use them to prevent people who are disreputable from using their bank. His first call was to one branch bank, and he essentially got the person to admit that the thing that they used to deal with the credit check service was the merchant ID. And then he called another branch of the bank and pretended to be a customer service representative from that particular check system and said, hey, listen, we're doing a survey to find out how customers like our service. And then he went through a series of questions that gave him all of the information that he needed about how the company operated. And he did it through a series of very cleverly engineered questions. He then was able to call to the company and say, hey, I'm Mr. Jones with this bank, and I'm trying to find out information about this gentleman, and here is his Social Security number. I need to know if he's opened any other bank accounts in the last 90 days. And of course, because he sounded like he had the right merchant ID and the right Social Security number, the company gave him everything that he needed. That is social engineering. And here's how this scam would work in the real world. The first call would go to the receptionist, for example, at the law firm. Who pays invoices for your company? Oh, well, that's Debbie Doe down the hall. Okay, you need her number? Yes, please give me her number. So he gets the phone number and then he hangs up. Then he goes to LinkedIn and he finds out everything he can about her educational background, where she's worked previously, what her level of education is, that sort of thing. And he will use this information to assess whether or not this person is a likely target of a scam. Then he goes to Spokeo. Spokeo is an information aggregator, and if you pay the $29, $30, whatever it is a month, you can get pretty much a lot of information about anyone from that service. There is also a provision where if you go to Spokeo, you can opt out of having your information aggregated, and I would urge you to do so because that's very important. You don't want people having free rein to use your information. Then he can gather the information that he needs and For example, when he calls back to talk to Debbie Doe about the money that is being owed, he says, I think you and I met when you were at uh, Calvary College, and didn't you study there? Yeah, you were there. What, from 1995 to 1997? Is that right? Yeah, I remember seeing you there. Yeah, I went there myself. Listen, I've got a problem. It's a huge problem with your company. I have an invoice that's 30 days overdue. Usually, we stop doing business with people when that's the case. But if you wire the money today, I can get you back into good graces, but it's got to come today. So he then gives the wire information, and the next thing you know, the company is out whatever amount of money that they've been scammed for. So that's the social engineering way that hackers and other malefactors get access to your information. But there's also technical means, and let's look at a couple of those now. You never want to put a credit card into an email because your email may bounce through 5 or 6 different servers before it gets to where it's going. If you go up to your message headers and look at any email message you've received today, if it's not from your company, if it's from an outside source, you will see that it has gone through 3 or 4, sometimes 5 or 6 different servers before it got to you. And that's because the internet is set up to use the most efficient and quickest path to get you that email. Now, because of that, there is no way to tell how long that email sits on another server, and also how long it stays on there after it has been forwarded on to you. Thus, someone who has installed malware on a server far removed from anything that your company has any business with can still get access to your emails. They can figure out who you routinely send emails to, and then they can spoof your email addresses and send that person an email saying, hey, I need you to go and purchase 10 American Express gift cards and send them to these friends of the company. It happens every day, and these people make a lot of money doing that. I'm pretty sure they're sitting around laughing as they, light their cigars with 100-ruble notes. I don't even know if that's a sizable amount or not. But the bottom line is that you have to be really, really careful with these business email scams. Now, the FBI has put out a really interesting infographic on how these work, and let's take a look at that now. Step 1 identifies a target. Organized crime groups target businesses in the U.S. and abroad by exporting information available online to develop a profile on a company and its executives. So they find out who the CEO is, who the CFO is, that sort of thing. These are emails that are traditionally not ignored by routine employees and therefore much more likely to get a result. Step 2, grooming. Spear phishing emails and or phone calls target a victim's company's officials, typically in the finance department. Perpetrators use persuasion and what is often called social engineering to pressure and manipulate and exploit employees' human nature. Grooming may occur over a few days or even weeks. Step 3, email. A victim is convinced they are conducting a legitimate business transaction. The unwitting victim is then provided wiring instructions. Upon transfers, the funds are steered to a bank account controlled by the organized crime group. As you can see, this is a pretty serious and sophisticated scam. You have to be really, really careful about doing business with individuals who you don't know, and particularly over the phone. Just because somebody says, hey, I'm Eric from accounting, doesn't mean that he's Eric from accounting. He might be Vladimir from somewhere else. And the long and short of all of this is that if you're going to do business and use email, you have to have a level of suspicion for anything that shows up in your inbox. Well, that's what I have for you today. It's not a long video, but hopefully it's a helpful one. If you have an opportunity today, do something nice for someone, unless they're a scammer, in which case you can sort of avoid doing that. But at any rate, hopefully you've had a terrific day today, and we'll have a better day tomorrow, and I will catch you on here down at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.